Most remember Marilyn Monroe as the ultimate sex symbol, but behind the glamour was a woman fighting studio control while secretly building an extensive personal library. We contrast her public image with her private reality, exploring how foster care and maternal institutionalization created relationship patterns, how method acting with Lee Strasberg fueled her anxiety, and how her intellectual pursuits contradicted the dumb. Blonde stereotype she couldn't escape. Norma Jean Mortensen was born on the 1st of June, 1926 in Los Angeles, California. Her early life was marked by profound instability, beginning with her residence at the Los Angeles County Hospital and later moving to a foster home on West Vermont Avenue. Her mother, Gladys Pearl Baker, worked as a film cutter for various motion picture studios, a profession that offered little financial security. The absence of her father, Charles Stanley Gifford, was a defining feature of her childhood, creating a foundational experience of abandonment. Gladys's mental health struggles significantly impacted the home environment. She experienced severe emotional distress, which led to her being institutionalized on multiple occasions, leaving her daughter in a state of perpetual uncertainty. This cycle of moving between foster homes and the guardianship of family friends began when Norma Jean was just 7 years old. One of her early baptisms took place at the Hollywood First Methodist Church, a rare moment of formal structure. Psychological analysis suggests that such early childhood trauma, including parental absence and a chaotic home life, can profoundly shape personality development. Researchers note that these experiences often create a deep-seated need for security and validation. The constant upheaval and lack of a stable parental figure are seen as formative events that would later influence her public persona and artistic expressions, as she sought to create the love and stability she lacked in her youth. This foundational instability would soon be compounded by a devastating family crisis that would permanently alter her world. When Marilyn was just 7 years old, her life fractured irreparably. In late 1933, her mother, Gladys Baker, was institutionalized and diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. This sudden removal created a profound attachment trauma for the young girl. Psychologists note that such early maternal separation often establishes a core fear of abandonment, a wound that would shape Marilyn's entire emotional landscape. With her mother confined, Marilyn was declared a ward of the state in 1934. This legal severance formalized a profound sense of being utterly alone in the world. The stability of a permanent home was replaced by the uncertainty of foster care and orphanages. Research shows that this specific type of childhood instability can lead to a chronic anxiety about relationships and belonging. Marilyn herself later reflected on this desolate period with piercing clarity. In her autobiography, she wrote, "I felt I was in a deep well, screaming for someone to pull me out, but no one heard me." This memory of screaming into a void perfectly captures the psychological isolation she endured. The experience forged a desperate need for love and validation, a driving force that would later manifest in her relentless pursuit of acclaim and connection, all while masking a deep-seated terror of being left once more. Yet this profound isolation was merely the beginning of a much longer journey through institutional care that would further cement these fears. Marilyn Monroe's childhood was defined by profound instability. Beginning with her placement into the Los Angeles Orphans Home Society at the age of 9. She remained there for nearly 2 years, a period marked by strict routines and a deep sense of institutional loneliness. This was merely the prelude to a cycle of displacement, as she was subsequently moved through 11 different foster homes across Southern California. Each placement varied in duration, from a few months to under a year in locations including Compton, Van Nuys, and West Los Angeles. The psychological toll of this constant relocation was immense. In her autobiography, she poignantly described the core feeling of this period, writing, "I felt I was not wanted any place." This sentiment of being an unwelcome burden became a foundational trauma. Psychologists note that such repeated abandonment in formative years can severely disrupt attachment, fostering a deep-seated insecurity and a fractured sense of self. The brief hope of a stable family life emerged in 1937 when her mother, Gladys Baker, reclaimed her for a short period. However, this reunion was fleeting. Gladys' own mental health struggles necessitated Marilyn's swift return to the foster care system, reinforcing her perception of impermanence in all relationships. This early experience of being perpetually uprooted and feeling fundamentally unwanted forged a desperate yearning for love and acceptance that would later permeate her public persona. Research shows that such childhood instability often manifests in adulthood as a high need for external validation. The charming, vulnerable image she cultivated on screen can be viewed as a direct, albeit unconscious, appeal for the adoration and security she was systematically denied during these formative years in foster care and the orphanage. This profound need for stability and belonging would soon drive her toward a life-altering decision at just 16 years of age. In June of 1942, 16-year-old Norma Jean Mortensen entered into a marriage with James Doherty, a union arranged by a legal guardian, Grace McKee Goddard. This event took place shortly after her guardian's own family relocated to the eastern United States, leaving the young woman with a difficult choice. The wedding ceremony itself was held in Los Angeles, California, a practical solution to prevent Norma Jean from being returned to the Los Angeles orphans' home system. In her autobiography, it is mentioned that this decision was presented as necessary for her continued security and a stable home environment. The relationship with Doherty, a 21-year-old police and aircraft plant worker, did provide a structured and conventional domestic life for the young bride. They initially resided in Van Nuys, California, before Doherty joined the Merchant Marine, leading to a period of relocation. From a psychological perspective, researchers note that such early arranged marriages can offer crucial external stability for individuals with insecure backgrounds. However, psychological analysis also suggests this stability can represent another form of institutionalization, where personal autonomy is exchanged for security within a new, socially sanctioned structure. This marriage, while offering a refuge from the instability of her childhood, also continued a pattern where her life's trajectory was significantly directed by external forces. Psychological studies show that early institutional care can create a deep-seated need for safety, sometimes leading individuals to accept predefined roles. For Norma Jean, this period provided a temporary anchor, yet it was a chapter that ultimately could not contain the ambitions and complexities of the woman who would become Marilyn Monroe. This search for stability would soon lead her into another structured environment, though one that would ultimately open a very different path. In early 1944, a young woman named Norma Jean Doherty was working on the assembly line at the Radioplane Munitions Factory in Burbank, California. Her task was spraying airplane parts with fire retardant and inspecting parachutes, a vital but anonymous role in the war effort. This routine existence, however, was on the verge of a dramatic and unexpected shift. That same year, Army photographer David Conover was dispatched to the factory to capture images of female workers boosting morale. His lens found Norma Jean. Struck by her photogenic quality and vibrant energy, he took a series of pictures that would alter the course of her life forever. Conover's photographs, as noted in biographies of the era, were not just technically proficient, they captured a latent star quality waiting to be discovered. He reportedly encouraged her to pursue modeling, a suggestion that ignited a newfound ambition. This encounter marked the definitive beginning of her professional modeling career and the start of a profound identity transformation. She soon signed with the Blue Book Model Agency, securing early assignments for magazine advertisements and paint-up photos. Psychologists note that such rapid external validation can catalyze a reformulation of self-concept. Each successful photo shoot, each positive reinforcement from photographers, began building the confidence required to shed the identity of Norma Jean. By 1945, she was actively modeling, her image slowly being crafted into the public persona the world would soon know, taking the first deliberate steps toward becoming Marilyn Monroe. Yet this carefully constructed transformation stood in stark contrast to the unassuming origins of her career, which began under a completely different name. Before becoming Marilyn Monroe, Norma Jean Mortensen began her modeling career under the professional name Jane Norman. Her first significant break came when she appeared on the cover of the magazine Family Circle in the mid-1940s, photographed by Joseph Jaska. This initial success was quickly followed by covers for other publications, including Peak and US Camera. During this period, she collaborated with photographer Andre D. Deans, traveling on assignments that allowed her to experiment extensively with her image and presentation. This phase of her career was crucial for the gradual development of her public persona. Psychologists note that this time provided a safe space for identity exploration, a process where an individual experiments with different social roles. She tested various hairstyles, makeup looks, and poses, moving away from the girl next door aesthetic she initially projected. Research into personality development suggests such experimentation is common for individuals seeking to construct a stable public identity, especially after early life instability. Through these modeling successes, The foundational elements of the Marilyn Monroe persona began to crystallize. The name Jean Norman was eventually set aside, marking the end of an exploratory chapter and the conscious beginning of a legendary brand. This period allowed her to build the confidence and visual vocabulary that would soon captivate the world. This carefully constructed identity would soon undergo its most significant transformation under the guidance of the Hollywood studio system. The transformation into Marilyn Monroe began when Norma Jean Mortensen signed her first contract with 20th Century Fox in August of 1946. The studio system meticulously crafted her new identity, starting with the symbolic name change. This was not merely a professional rebranding, but the foundation for a manufactured public persona. The studio orchestrated a comprehensive physical and artistic transformation to fit the ideal of a Hollywood starlet. According to studio records, she underwent a significant physical transformation, which included hairstyling, wardrobe changes, and even a subtle dental procedure. Furthermore, she was enrolled in intensive voice lessons to raise and soften her natural speaking tone, creating her signature breathy delivery. She also attended acting classes to refine her on-screen presence and movement. Every aspect of her being was curated for mass appeal, constructing the quintessential sex symbol of the era. Psychologists note that such a profound identity shift, especially when imposed by an external power like a film studio, can have a deep psychological impact. Research shows that creating a separate public persona often leads to a fractured sense of self. In her autobiography, Monroe mentioned the strange duality of being both the created image and the private individual. This process, while launching her to stardom, required her to suppress her authentic self, a psychological burden that contemporary accounts suggest she carried throughout her career. The creation of Marilyn Monroe was a brilliant commercial success, but it came at a significant personal cost. Yet this carefully crafted persona would soon face its first major test, as the very studio system that created her began funneling Marilyn into roles that would define and confine her in equal measure. Marilyn Monroe's earliest film roles immediately cast a long shadow over her career. Her brief uncredited appearance in Scudder Who, Scudder Hay, from 1948 was a mere glimpse, a single line of dialogue. Yet her subsequent role in Ladies of the Chorus, that same year, cemented a pattern. She portrayed a chorus girl, a character whose appeal was largely superficial, establishing the archetype of the dumb blonde that would haunt her. According to recollections from contemporaries, directors saw her physical presence as her primary asset, overlooking the sharp mind behind the luminous smile. This typecasting created a profound psychological conflict. Research shows that being forced into a simplistic persona can cause significant internal dissonance, especially for an individual with intellectual depth. Marilyn was an avid reader with a known interest in complex literature and psychology, a stark contrast to the vacant characters she was hired to play. One director from that era was quoted as saying, "She had the look we needed. That was the entire focus." This fixation on her appearance, while ignoring her intelligence, fueled a deep-seated tension between her authentic self and the manufactured studio image. The psychological toll of this duality began to manifest. Psychologists note that such a division between private intellect and public persona can lead to feelings of invisibility and inauthenticity. Marilyn's own ambitions were far greater than the roles she was given, creating a chasm between her professional identity and her personal aspirations. This early typecasting was not merely a career trajectory, it was the foundation of a persistent internal struggle, pitting the woman she was against the symbol she was compelled to become. Yet this internal struggle would soon find its first major outlet through roles that finally began to showcase her deeper capabilities. The year 1950 marked Marilyn Monroe's true cinematic breakthrough, with two supporting roles that captivated critics. Her brief but memorable appearance in The Asphalt Jungle as Angela Finlay, the elderly lawyer's young mistress, showcased a vulnerability that transcended mere glamour. In a poignant scene, she confesses her fear of the police, her voice trembling with a palpable authenticity that surprised audiences and directors alike. This performance demonstrated an emotional depth that the studio system had previously overlooked. Simultaneously, her role as Miss Caswell in All About Eve provided a perfect vehicle for her sharp comedic timing. With the iconic line, "Why do they always look like unhappy rabbits?" she delivered a clever, self-aware performance that mocked the very industry exploiting her. According to contemporary accounts, this specific moment elicited laughter mixed with a new respect, signaling she was more than a beautiful face. Critics began to take notice. praising the intelligence she brought to seemingly superficial characters. Psychological analysis suggests these roles allowed Monroe to project a complex duality. The public saw the confirmed sex symbol, yet the performances hinted at a nuanced inner world. Research into her career trajectory shows this period was pivotal. The critical attention from these films created a tension between her desired artistic validation and the entrenched bombshell image. This conflict would profoundly influence her subsequent choices and personal struggles, as she fought to be seen for her acting talent. Yet this very tension between her artistic aspirations and public persona would soon manifest in an even more intimate arena. As she sought refuge in a relationship that promised stability but delivered its own profound collision of worlds, Marilyn Monroe's marriage to baseball legend Joe DiMaggio in January 1954 represented a profound psychological collision. On the surface, it was the union of America's two most iconic figures. Yet beneath this public facade, their relationship was defined by a powerful tension between his traditional masculinity and her fragile, complex inner world. DiMaggio, a retired sports hero, sought a traditional wife and a quiet domestic life, a stark contrast to Marilyn's burgeoning Hollywood stardom. Psychologists note that his desire for control likely stemmed from a need to stabilize his own post-fame identity, while her search for a father figure and emotional security was a recurring pattern. This dynamic created an immediate and unsustainable pressure. A pivotal incident that exposed this fracture was the filming of the now iconic subway great scene for The 7-Year Itch in September 1954. As Marilyn's white dress billowed up before a crowd of cheering spectators and photographers, DiMaggio watched from the sidelines. Witnesses recall his face darkening with a visible silent fury. The public display of his wife as a sexual spectacle was in direct opposition to his possessive nature and his vision of a private marriage. This event was not merely a moment of jealousy, it was a public humiliation that symbolized the irreconcilable conflict between their two worlds. The marriage lasted only 274 days, ending in divorce that October. Research into attachment styles suggests that Marilyn's childhood trauma, including time in orphanages, created a deep-seated need for security that a controlling relationship could never fulfill. Conversely, DiMaggio's inability to accept her professional identity and public persona doomed the union from the start. In her own words, Marilyn expressed a longing for a simple, peaceful life, a desire that this marriage, for all its initial promise, could not provide. Their brief union remains a poignant case study in the clash between public image and private need. This failed search for domestic tranquility would soon lead her toward a very different kind of partnership. Marilyn Monroe's marriage to playwright Arthur Miller, which lasted from 1956 to 1961, represented a profound shift from her previous union. Where her marriage to Joe DiMaggio was rooted in a shared celebrity status, her connection with Miller was fundamentally intellectual. She was famously drawn to his mind, seeing in him a stability and seriousness she deeply craved. Miller, in turn, was captivated by her vulnerability and raw emotional presence, a stark contrast to his cerebral world. In his autobiography, Time Bends, he reflected on this dynamic, writing, "She was a poet in a world that had no use for poets. Her gift was her vulnerability, and it was also a curse." Psychologists note that this relationship showcased a classic case of complementary needs. Monroe sought an intellectual anchor and a father figure, while Miller was drawn to the role of protector and savior. However, this very foundation created immense psychological pressure. The weight of Miller's expectations and Monroe's desperate need for validation created a destructive cycle. The public scrutiny was relentless, magnifying every crack in their carefully constructed image. Her own private writings reveal a growing despair. In one diary entry, she confesses, "I am so alone. I feel I am a burden to him, a problem he must solve." The pressures of their careers and Monroe's ongoing personal struggles ultimately proved insurmountable. Filming The Misfits, a screenplay Miller wrote for her, became a painful metaphor for their disintegrating marriage. The tense atmosphere on set mirrored the turmoil in their private life. Research into their relationship shows that the intellectual attraction, while powerful initially, could not shield them from the compounded stresses of fame, mental health challenges, and incompatible coping mechanisms. Their divorce in 1961 marked the end of a union that promised intellectual salvation but delivered only hate and emotional isolation for Monroe, a final devastating chapter in her search for a stable identity beyond the sex symbol. Yet this devastating failure with a celebrated intellectual did little to alter the fundamental template of her romantic pursuits. Marilyn Monroe's romantic patterns consistently gravitated toward powerful, older men who represented stability and authority. Her relationships with Frank Sinatra, Yves Montand, and President John F. Kennedy reveal a profound search for paternal validation. Psychological studies show such patterns often originate in disrupted childhood attachments. Monroe's early life was marked by instability, moving between foster homes without a consistent father figure. This foundational experience created a template for her adult relationships. Her connection with Frank Sinatra in the early 1960s exemplified this dynamic. Friends recalled she viewed him as a strong protector, a man who could navigate the complexities she found overwhelming. Similarly, her affair with Yves Montand during the filming of Let's Make Love in 1960 reflected a pattern of seeking validation from established, charismatic figures. Psychological analysis using attachment theory suggests Monroe exhibited an anxious attachment style. She desperately sought reassurance from partners who were often emotionally unavailable, mirroring her early experiences with caregivers. The most documented, yet clandestine, relationship was with President John F. Kennedy. This connection symbolized the ultimate achievement of securing attention from the most powerful man in the nation. It was not merely a romantic entanglement, but a psychological quest for worth. Research into attachment theory indicates that individuals with insecure attachments may confuse intensity and power with genuine care. In her own words from private notes, she expressed a longing to be seen for who I truly am, a sentiment pointing to this deep-seated need for validation. These relationships, while offering temporary solace, ultimately reinforced a cycle of emotional unfulfillment, as they could not heal the foundational wounds of her youth. Yet this emotional void extended beyond her personal life, creating a parallel vulnerability in her professional world. Behind the luminous smile, Marilyn Monroe navigated a constant storm of anxiety, particularly surrounding her work. According to contemporaries, the pressure to perform to embody the perfect fantasy was immense. This manifested in a well-documented pattern of chronic tardiness and an inability to appear on set. The filming of Something's Got to Give in the early 1960s became a tragic case study. She missed numerous days, and on set she was often too paralyzed by fear to deliver her lines, leading to significant production delays and her eventual dismissal from the project. This crippling performance anxiety was deeply intertwined with a profound perfectionism. Psychologists note that such anxiety often stems from a deep-seated fear of failure and a fragile sense of self-worth. Despite her global fame and public adoration, Monroe was driven by an internal critic that never found her work good enough. In her autobiography, she mentions a constant feeling of being an imposter, terrified of being exposed as a fraud. Research shows that this perfectionistic striver, coupled with a history of early life instability, creates a psychological cocktail where success does not alleviate anxiety but intensifies the pressure to maintain it. Every public appearance, every film scene, became a high-stakes test she feared she would fail. The very craft that brought her fame also fueled her deepest insecurities, creating a vicious cycle where the expectation of perfection made the act of performing unbearable. The glamorous facade hid a relentless internal battle, where the fear of not being good enough ultimately overshadowed the brilliance the world so eagerly watched. This escalating psychological distress ultimately compelled her to seek professional help, leading her toward the therapeutic support that would become her next crucial step. Marilyn Monroe entered psychoanalytic treatment with Dr. Marianne Criss in the mid-1950s, viewing therapy as a vital path to self-improvement. This commitment reflected the era's growing acceptance of psychoanalysis for exploring inner conflicts. She later transitioned to the care of Dr. Ralph Greenson, with whom she developed an intensely close therapeutic relationship that extended beyond traditional boundaries. Greenson's approach, while rooted in Freudian principles, involved an unusual level of personal involvement, including frequent sessions at his home. In her therapy notes, Monroe revealed profound self-doubt, writing, "I have always been deeply terrified to really be someone." This candid admission highlights her struggle with identity beneath the glamorous public persona. Dr. Greenson later reflected on their work together, noting her bottomless void of insecurity and her desperate need to feel understood and loved. He believed her core issue was a deep-seated fear of abandonment, traceable to her childhood experiences. The psychoanalytic framework of the 1950s and 60s focused heavily on uncovering early life trauma. Psychological studies note that this method aimed to connect adult behaviors with formative events. For Monroe, this meant exploring a childhood marked by instability and a lack of consistent caregivers. Her dedication to this process, often involving multiple sessions per week, underscores her genuine desire for psychological healing and a more stable sense of self, a pursuit that remained central until the end of her life. Yet this profound commitment to psychological healing existed alongside another, more perilous form of treatment that would ultimately complicate her journey towards stability. Marilyn Monroe's dependence on prescription medication reveals a tragic intersection of medical practice and personal vulnerability. In the 1950s and early 60s, doctors liberally prescribed barbiturates for sleep and amphetamines for energy, a common but perilous combination. Monroe's personal physicians, including Dr. Hyman Engelbert, regularly supplied her with powerful sedatives like Nembutal and chloral hydrate to combat her severe insomnia. Simultaneously, she used stimulants to maintain the demanding pace of her career, a cycle that created a physiological and psychological trap. According to contemporaries, her consumption escalated significantly during the production of The Misfits in 1960. In her autobiography, it is mentioned that she felt trapped in a chemical cage, needing pills to sleep and more pills to wake. This reliance directly impacted her professional life. She became increasingly unreliable on set, struggling with memory and focus. Psychologists note that such polypharmacy, without integrated mental health support, often exacerbates underlying conditions. The very medications intended to stabilize her for work ultimately undermined her ability to perform. Research shows that the medical community of that era underestimated the addictive potential of these substances, viewing them as simple solutions. For Monroe, this pharmacological landscape proved fatal. Her substance use was not an isolated vice but a desperate, medically sanctioned attempt to manage profound inner turmoil, a fragile mask that ultimately cracked under the unbearable pressure. This internal turmoil inevitably spilled over into her professional life, where she began challenging the very system that had long confined her. Marilyn Monroe's escalating conflict with 20th Century Fox marked a pivotal rebellion. The studio relentlessly cast her in stereotypical, dumb blonde roles which she increasingly resented. According to contemporaries' recollections, she felt trapped and artistically unfulfilled, craving serious, substantial parts that showcased her depth. This struggle for creative control reached its climax in early 1954 when she refused the film, The Girl in Pink Tights. In response, the studio suspended her, a bold move that shocked Hollywood. This suspension was not merely a professional dispute, it was a profound psychological stand. Defiant, Monroe left for New York that same year to study at the Actors Studio, seeking to hone her craft. She then took her most revolutionary step by co-founding Marilyn Monroe Productions. This empowered her to command a higher salary, approve directors, and choose her own projects. In her autobiography, it is mentioned that this move was about claiming ownership of her own image and career. Psychologists note that this act represented a critical assertion of autonomy. It was a direct challenge to the powerful studio system that had constructed her public persona, a system she now sought to master. The psychological significance of this rebellion is profound. Research shows that reclaiming agency is a vital step in an individual's development, especially for someone whose identity was so publicly manufactured. Monroe was fighting against the very typecasting that made her famous, a typecasting that mirrored the limiting labels she resisted in her personal life. Her pursuit was not just for better roles, but for artistic legitimacy and self-worth. This chapter reveals a woman courageously deconstructing the sex symbol mask to be seen as the serious actress she knew she could become. This quest for artistic authenticity would soon lead her to a specific and transformative discipline. Marilyn Monroe's enrollment at the Actors Studio under Lee Strasberg marked a pivotal turn in her artistic journey. She immersed herself in the method, an acting technique that demanded profound emotional honesty. Strasberg's approach provided Monroe with a structured psychological toolkit to access her own life experiences for her roles. This process gave her performances a new, startling depth and authenticity that transcended her established screen persona. The method's core techniques, particularly emotional memory and sense memory, became central to her work. She learned to recall personal sensations and past feelings to fuel her character's emotional states. While this equipped her with formidable acting instruments, psychological analysts often note that such intensive self-scrutiny could intensify her innate emotional vulnerability. Constantly mining her own psychological landscape for her art left her with fewer defenses off-screen. Her transformative work is evident in films like Bus Stop and The Misfits. In Bus Stop, her portrayal of Sherry, a vulnerable saloon singer, showcased a raw, unguarded quality that critics hailed as a revelation. For her final completed film, The Misfits, the method allowed her to channel profound personal desolation into her character Rosalind, creating a performance many view as tragically autobiographical. Lee Strasberg himself later assessed her talent, stating, "She was one of the greatest students I ever had. She had a kind of luminous quality, a simplicity that was so direct and so pure." This study gave her the craft, but it also demanded a heavy emotional price. Yet this intense emotional immersion existed alongside a surprising intellectual discipline, revealing a woman far more complex than her public image suggested. Behind the glamorous facade, Marilyn Monroe cultivated a rich intellectual life that starkly contrasted with her public persona. Her personal library, a collection of over 400 volumes, stood as a testament to her serious mind. It contained works by Sigmund Freud, Leo Tolstoy, and Walt Whitman, reflecting her deep curiosity about the human psyche, existential questions, and poetic expression. This was not a staged photo opportunity, but a private sanctuary for a woman engaged in a relentless pursuit of self-education. According to the recollections of contemporaries, she often carried books to film sets, reading between takes. In her autobiography, she mentions her desire to be taken seriously, stating, "I don't mind making jokes, but I don't want to look like one." This quote reveals the profound internal conflict between her authentic self and the manufactured, dumb, blonde image. She yearned for intellectual recognition that the studio system actively denied her. Psychologists note that such a divide between one's private depth and public superficiality can create significant cognitive dissonance. Research shows that engaging with complex literature can be a coping mechanism, a way to construct an inner world safe from external projections. For Marilyn, her library was that refuge. Her extensive reading, from philosophy to modern poetry, was not a hobby but an essential act of self-definition and a quiet rebellion against the constraints of her fame. Yet this sanctuary of the mind could not fully shield her from the escalating turmoil in her professional life. The year 1962 marked a profound professional collapse for Marilyn Monroe. The production of her final film, Something's Got to Give, descended into chaos, plagued by her frequent absences. Colleagues noted her visible distress and inability to report to the set consistently. This culminated in her shocking dismissal from the project by 20th Century Fox in early June, a devastating public rejection. The studio publicly blamed her for the delays, framing her as unreliable. This professional termination acted as a catalyst, severely exacerbating her underlying psychological fragility. Psychologists note that such public rejection can trigger profound feelings of shame and worthlessness, particularly in individuals with a fragile self-concept. For Marilyn, whose identity was deeply intertwined with her stardom, being fired was not merely a career setback but a profound personal invalidation. It confirmed her deepest fears of being dispensable. The fallout accelerated her isolation from the Hollywood support systems she desperately needed. Friends and professional contacts began to withdraw, uncertain how to handle her escalating crisis. According to recollections of contemporaries, she felt increasingly abandoned and misunderstood by an industry that had once celebrated her. This isolation created a vicious cycle. The more she was isolated, the more her psychological state deteriorated, and the more unworkable she appeared. Research shows that social withdrawal is a common consequence of severe rejection sensitivity, trapping an individual in a state of profound loneliness. In her final months, Marilyn Monroe was not only professionally adrift but also utterly alone, her world shrinking as the very community that built her career now turned away. As this profound loneliness deepened, the calendar turned toward what would become her final week. Marilyn Monroe's final week began with a subdued celebration of her 36th birthday. She spent the day at her Los Angeles home, receiving a small group of friends and a telephone call from Joe DiMaggio, who would later arrange her funeral. Her last professional photo shoot took place just days prior for Vogue magazine, where photographer George Barris captured her in a serene, introspective mood. These moments presented a woman caught between public radiance and private solitude. On August 4, 1962, her activities appeared routine. She made several telephone calls throughout the day, including conversations with her lawyer and her housekeeper. Her final known call, placed in the evening, was to a friend where she reportedly sounded disheartened. By the morning of August 5th, the housekeeper, finding the bedroom door locked and receiving no response, grew concerned and contacted Monroe's psychiatrist. He arrived and gained entry through a window, discovering the actress deceased in her bed. The official time of death was recorded in the early hours of that Saturday, The scene revealed an empty bottle of prescription medication, a detail noted in the police report. Investigations were immediately launched, focusing on the factual circumstances. The news sent shockwaves across the globe, abruptly ending the life of an international icon. Psychological analysis often reference this period as a profound illustration of the chasm between a meticulously crafted public persona and an individual's internal struggles, a dichotomy that defined her legacy. Yet this very chasm between persona and person would ultimately forge a psychological legacy far more complex than the tragedy itself. Marilyn Monroe's psychological legacy extends far beyond her filmography, offering a profound case study in the intersection of trauma, identity, and celebrity. Her enduring cultural significance lies not merely in her image, but in the universal themes her life story represents. It reveals the immense psychological toll of fame, where a manufactured public persona can eclipse and fracture a fragile private self. Her experience prefigured our contemporary understanding of celebrity psychology, illustrating how intense public scrutiny exacerbates underlying mental health struggles. Psychological researchers note her case demonstrates the long-term effects of childhood adversity, including instability and reported experiences of neglect, on adult attachment and self-worth. From an early age, Norma Jean faced profound instability. Researchers show that such early experiences can shape a personality deeply susceptible to external validation. This search for affirmation often manifested in her professional life. In her own words from a private letter, she wrote, "I have always been deeply terrified to really be someone, but I decided to try." This internal conflict between the authentic self and the public icon became the central drama of her existence. The Marilyn character was a performance, a survival mechanism that eventually consumed the woman behind it. Her story remains critically relevant for understanding the construction of a public persona as a trauma response. Psychologists highlight how individuals with similar backgrounds may develop a heightened, almost hyper-vigilant awareness of others' perceptions, crafting an identity designed to please and secure love. Monroe's career was this process on a global scale. Her comedic talent and vulnerability on screen resonated because they channeled a genuine, albeit amplified, emotional truth. Modern analysis of celebrity culture consistently find parallels to her narrative, where the pressures of maintaining an image lead to similar psychological distress. Monroe's life, therefore, serves as a timeless lens through which we examine the human cost of fame and the enduring quest for an authentic identity beneath the mask. Yet beneath this very mask lay a mind whose depth and complexity defied the simplistic image she was forced to embody. Beyond the carefully constructed public image, Marilyn Monroe possessed a sharp intellect that often went unrecognized. She maintained an extensive personal library with over 400 books, ranging from classic literature to works on psychology. Contemporaries recalled her as a deeply curious individual who engaged in thoughtful conversations, far removed from the naive persona she portrayed on screen. In her autobiography, she mentions a profound desire to be a serious actress, studying at the actor's studio to hone her craft against studio typecasting. Psychologists note that her resilience was forged in a childhood marked by profound instability, moving between 12 different foster homes. This early experience of abandonment and insecurity created a complex individual who craved validation yet struggled with intense self-doubt. Research shows such backgrounds can lead to a fragile sense of self, which manifested in her professional life as performance anxiety and a relentless pursuit of perfection. Her marriage to the playwright Arthur Miller is often cited as evidence of her yearning for intellectual companionship and a stable, respected identity. Her story serves as a poignant lesson on the human cost of fame. It reminds us that public figures are multidimensional people whose deepest struggles and greatest strengths are often hidden behind the myths we create about them. Understanding this complexity is crucial, as it fosters empathy and challenges the simplistic labels that can cause profound personal suffering. Our journey into the life of Marilyn Monroe concludes. We have explored her challenging birth and family background, including her mother's institutionalization and her own time in foster care and an orphanage. Her early marriage at 16, subsequent factory work, and discovery led to initial modeling successes before her name change and entry into the studio system. The analysis touched upon her early film roles, breakthrough, and public recognition alongside her marriages to Joe DiMaggio and Arthur Miller, highlighting patterns in her romantic relationships. We also examined her anxiety and performance pressure, psychiatric treatment, substance use, and a fight against the studio system. Her dedication to method acting with Lee Strasberg, intellectual pursuits, professional setbacks, and final days were also considered. This narrative delves into her psychological legacy and cultural impact, moving beyond the superficial sex symbol myth. If you found this material interesting, hit the like button. See you in the next episodes.